Mr. Derek Gallimore, he is a lifelong entrepreneur and a global citizen. In his 20s, he managed to become something of a millionaire and soon carved his own path to create the world's leading outsourcing marketplace, which is Outsource Accelerator. He has lived and evolved and worked in 5 different countries, traveled through dozens more, and embodied remote, online, and global work since 2005. And now he believes that his new home, the Philippines, has one-off chance to become a prosperous first world nation through proliferation of outsourcing. Among all these other things, he is also an author. He just so happened to write this very book we are launching today. Friends and guests, please welcome today's speaker to help get to know the good side of this bad boy of business. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Derek Gallimore.
Welcome all. Thank you so much for celebrating this small milestone with us. My name's Derek, and I'm the CEO of Outsource Accelerator. I'm not going to directly talk about the book so much today. Of course, we can discuss it afterwards and have any questions. I just want to sort of shine a light on outsourcing. Obviously, we're in the Philippines. We're at the heart of outsourcing. And really what I feel outsourcing means to the Philippines and the potential that it can and should mean for the Philippines. And really I've written the book Inside Outsourcing to try and shine a light on the potential of the Philippines and the capabilities of the Filipino professional and what that means on a global stage and the future prospects for the Philippines. And I really wholeheartedly think that outsourcing can provide the gateway or opportunity for the Philippines to be a first world prosperous nation, and it has never had that opportunity before, and so I really feel that this is really not a once in a lifetime but a once off opportunity for the Philippines that we're now entering into. So I've got a fancy app on my phone which is nice. Okay, so this is only 10 minutes and then we'll get into a few questions. Outsourcing is big business. It really is. Outsourcing is huge, okay? And just to put that into some context, for the Philippine economy in total, okay, or the GDP as it's often referred to, outsourcing constitutes about 12% of the entire economy. When you combine that with the second biggest, so outsourcing and OFWs, or overseas foreign workers, are the 2 biggest sectors in the Philippines. Combined, they contribute about 25% to the economy, which is just absolutely massive. When you think about it, actually OFWs and outsourcing, they are far more similar than they are different. Okay, it's effectively the trade of Filipino professionals. Okay, it is a service industry, and you are effectively using Filipino professionals in an offshore setting. OFWs are there in person, whereas outsourcing means that they are there virtually. Okay, they are pretty much the same 2 sectors. And they constitute 25% of the global GDP. When you consider all of the auxiliary industries that are impacted by outsourcing and also OFWs, it would extend easily to sort of 35-40% of the economy. To put that into perspective, with the US economy, we all hear about US technology. We hear about Amazon and Google and Facebook and these trillion-dollar companies and Tesla. The US technology industry is only 9.8% of their GDP. Okay, so something as world-dominating as that, it's still only a relatively small amount of the sector. Interestingly, in terms of the people that power outsourcing, It's only about 1% of the population power the 12% of the contribution, and it's only about 1.6% of the population that power the OFW population. You can see that both as a good or a bad thing, okay, in that if you actually get everyone into the outsourcing industry, then it has the potential to have a massive impact on the GDP of the economy. And I believe that there's an opportunity coming now to get more and more people into outsourcing, which is basically just another word for global employment. Significantly as well, OFWs have provided a lot of economic stability and prosperity to the country, but it's meant that families have gone without their parents, their families. And outsourcing is a way that it can keep people at home. They can earn world-class salaries while staying in the country with their families. Okay, really, really significant. Outsourcing is about to explode. Outsourcing has been going 30 years, but now it is reaching a tipping point where it is about to explode. This is a chart that I threw together. Don't really look too closely at it, but basically the red and yellow lines are indicative of globalization, or the lowering cost of globalization. And the blue line is World Trade Index. Okay, so you can see that basically world trade is really rocketing up, and the costs and friction associated with world trade is rocketing down. That means that more and more and more people and businesses engage in global trade. Significantly as well, we are in a world that is globalizing. And there are 4 primary reasons for this that I'll go through really super quick. Obviously, we all know about the internet. That is changing the way that we see borders, that we see interaction with people in the globe. Industry is moving away from products to services and IP. Okay, we see that in Google is just a company that trades information. Facebook is a company that trades information. Airbnb is a company that trades information. The whole world is moving from an industry from products to services, and these can be transferred online globally without friction. One culture, we're seeing an increase in one culture. A lot of the Filipino kids are growing up on a diet of Netflix, on NBA, on pizzas. There is now no cultural divide between the Philippines and the US or the UK. And these, again, are very powerful indicators for the globalization of the world and the dropping of barriers between people working in a global market. Lastly, tools and communications. Everything we take for granted now, like Slack, Skype, Chat, SAS, Asana, all of these tools that we now, Gmail, take for granted, means that you, while sitting in the Philippines, can work efficiently for someone in Wall Street. Okay, there are less and less barriers. Also, there's been one more. Over the last couple of years with COVID, we have all had a crash course in what it means for work from home, for remote, and the whole world has had this crash course. And the whole world is now realizing, as we head into a recession, we need to cut costs. Why are we hiring people, very expensive people, in New York, and they're sitting at home, when we can hire people in the Philippines? Okay. So massive, massive opportunities. This opportunity is hiding in plain sight. The Philippines does not realize the golden goose that outsourcing is to the Philippines. I suggest that outsourcing to the Philippines is like oil to the Arabs. Okay, it defines their community, their culture, for better or worse. If you ask the Arabs, they know exactly what oil means to the Middle East. Okay, and it is very, very obvious. You even get Kanye turning up to your birthdays and weddings. If you ask the average Filipino, what outsourcing means, and there's typically silence, okay? It's something that's known, but it's not really known. It's hard to touch, feel, understand. Maybe some people think of call centers, okay? And they almost cast it off as people work in call centers doing basic tasks, so what? That's an old industry. Okay, but it is so different to that. It is so different to that. And outsourcing is the next global wave of employment. And it is as significant as employment and the global economy itself. Weakness becomes strength. The Philippines has been plighted with hardship for a lot of its history. And one of the, I won't go too deep into it here, but one of the significant reasons why countries have different opportunities is because primarily there are border controls, there are different governments, labor migration is controlled. And if a country doesn't have a lot of opportunities for its people, then the economy struggles, and as a result the people struggle, and so the economy struggles more. Okay, it's a feedback mechanism. The issue 20, 30 years ago is that the US, for example, had a very strong economy, but the Philippines was not connected to the US, so the Philippines could not benefit at all. As a result, you can see here a chart which again is just indicative. You look at minimum wages around the world. You can see Australia up the top at $16.88. France, New Zealand, United Kingdom, all of these very high minimum wages. And then you look at Philippines, which is near the bottom at 61 cents per hour. Okay, this is an illustration of the inequalities of economic opportunity and prosperity around the world. This, when there were borders, when you were geographically confined of where you could participate in the economy, where you could work, you were limited to your geographical economy and your minimum wage. Whereas now, now that the world is connected digitally and the Filipinos can enter the global workforce, then they can now tap into the global economy and prosper as a result. There is a new breed of outsourcing. A lot of people, and I just want to explain this little chart here. On one side, you have the gig economy. Okay, you have Upwork, the freelancers, which people know very well. People are aware of this. Ever since Tim Ferriss, people are aware of Upwork. On the other end, you have the big BPOs, okay, the Convergys, the Teleperformance, the big call centers. People are aware of those, and again, they dismiss those. In the middle is the new generation of outsourcing. This has only existed for maybe 10, 15 years, and this is what's revolutionizing outsourcing. It is the catalyst for global employment, and this is the key to the Philippines dominating the future global economy. Okay, this mid-market here of BPOs is they represent small and medium-sized businesses across the globe, and they are the conduit for connecting Filipino employees with businesses in the West. The Convergys and Teleperformance, you might have heard of people talking about the BPO industry as a sunset industry. Many years ago, IBPAP started writing off outsourcing, saying this is a sunset industry. It has had its time. You know, we've had the gold rush, and now let's get on with our jobs. Let's get on with our lives. It's all over. That initial gold rush we had was tiny. This one is going to be many, many times bigger, and it will extend from now over to the next 20, 30 years. The old model of outsourcing, this is a org chart, and obviously the senior people up the top and the junior people down the bottom. The old type of outsourcing was that they would take one process and ship it off overseas. Okay, that would be like your call center or customer service. It did not impact the headquarters. It was separate. The recent outsourcing is what you got with Upwork and things like that, where Filipino staff were introduced at the bottom of the pile. Okay, these are the virtual assistants. They are the administrative assistants. Okay, and they started to work into the org chart of the business. Okay, it's a really good start, but there's more. When you really get things moving is when people realize that Filipinos are not just good for the basic tasks, but they can be very capable and competently contribute to the entire org chart of a business. This org chart is sitting in the US, but these green roles are Filipinos sitting in the Philippines. Okay. Before it was this, the business in the US would say, yeah, we can get an admin assistant, give them some admin roles. They realized the competency, and then they said, let's get them to manage departments, let's get senior executives, let's get leaders into our organization from the Philippines. Significantly as well, down here, the company gets least leverage of the opportunity. When they hire senior staff, they get the most leverage out of the global employment opportunity. And eventually, there is no reason why every role within organizations across the world are not powered by Filipino professionals. It is not much of a step from this position to this position to this position. And you can see that Philippine professionals can further infiltrate org charts of every company in the world. Okay, and this is the new global employment paradigm, and this is the new opportunity for the Philippines, significantly, but also every emerging market around the world. So, how big can this get? Here's some workings, basically. But in short, the summary of this is that there are 35 million small and medium-sized businesses in the West, okay? In the high-cost English-speaking countries like the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, there are 35 million businesses, and they collectively employ 60% of the workforce globally, and they collectively contribute about 60% to the GDP. So these are very small businesses. They are not your Facebooks, but in aggregate, they are far more powerful than the big enterprise. In short, there are about another 30 million jobs that will be offshored in the next 10 to 20 years. Okay, as outsourcing moves from being a kooky outlier, where some people have heard about it and they think it's a little bit crazy, and it will become normalized to the point where there will be a default where people are choosing their staff based on capabilities and competency and skill sets instead of where they are sitting. Okay, so a really significant change in the way that businesses select their staff. So that's 30 million jobs, okay? 30 million high-paid, white-collar jobs that the Philippines has a big shot at attracting. And it needs to do its best to try and get these jobs instead of them going to India, Jamaica, Jordan, all of these emerging outsourcing economies. So last slide, how big is this opportunity? this is Philippine outsourcing right now. It's $24 billion. Okay, it is huge. It is the single biggest industry in the Philippines. Okay, 24 billion. But if you compare this to global outsourcing, it is small. Okay, so this is the Philippines here. That's global outsourcing. And the new opportunity, the next wave of outsourcing, is 30 million jobs worth 600 billion. Okay, and that is coming over the next 10 to 20 years. Those jobs might not come to the Philippines, but the Philippines is known as a global expert of outsourcing already. Alongside India, the Philippines and India are the outsourcing experts. I would like to suggest that the Philippines has a far higher caliber, credibility, and it's easier to work with Filipinos. I also suggest that the Philippines needs to position itself as the Swiss banking of outsourcing. Okay, when you think of Switzerland, you think of banking, you think of chocolates. Philippines needs to be regarded as the Swiss banking of outsourcing. It's not the biggest, but it is the best and it is the highest quality. So there are 30 million high caliber white collar jobs on offer over the next 10 to 20 years. In this section here, that is 1 million people. Okay, the industry now only employs 1 million people, and there is another 30 million worth 600 billion, and that is the opportunity facing the Philippines. We won't go into that, but inside outsourcing. So inside outsourcing talks about all of this, of course. It talks about the opportunity. There is an equal opportunity for the Philippines to benefit, but also more significantly as well, the West benefits from this as well. The West benefits from accessing highly capable professionals at a discount to the West. So it's an awesome opportunity for everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Please share, like and click to subscribe to megabites.com.ph.